Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rural Rapport, a monthly program from the Center for Rural Affairs that celebrates the work being done to create vibrant rural communities and explores topics that affect the quality of life for the residents and businesses who call rural America home. I'm your host, Teresa Hoffman. As teachers and students return to the classroom and prepare for a busy year of math, reading, social studies, and other lessons, some students in Nebraska will also learn about and try food grown in their own state. The lessons are part of the Nebraska Department of Education's Harvest of the Month program, which promotes local fruits and vegetables and provides schools with the resources to support the sampling and serving of local foods to students. Joining me to talk about the program are Jessie, Coffey, and Sarah Meyer. Jessie and Sarah, thank you for joining me today. Before we talk about the Harvest of the Month program, please share your background and what you do with the Nebraska Department of Education.
Sure. We're glad to be here today. And as a part of the NDE, there's many different offices. And so Sarah and I both work in the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services, really that focus on a lot of the non-academic needs of youth. And then before I came to the NDE, I worked at Lincoln Public Schools for 13 years and worked with our child nutrition programs, our wellness policies, our early childhood classrooms across the district, and then a lot of out-of-school time, and we were lucky enough to have a USDA farm-to-school grant there as well. And as a registered dietitian, I'm very passionate about farm-to-school and all the benefits that it provides, and so I'm excited to be able to extend my passion for farm-to-school and work with child nutrition and in all the ways in which that happens across the state.
Yeah, and I'm Sarah Meyer. I'm also a registered dietitian. My background is in nutrition and dietetics. I've been with the Nebraska Department of Education for about 3 years now, working on a variety of programs around school wellness and food sovereignty, and mostly the last year and a half really focused in on farm to school. So in our office at NDE, like Jessie said, I'm a farm to school specialist. So really what that means is I connect Nebraska schools and early care and education sites with local farmers and ranchers and foods that they can serve in their child nutrition programs. So school lunch and school breakfast, different things like that. So farm to school is really an overarching term. So we say farm to school, but that includes after school and early care and education. Some people call it farm to plate or farm to table, lots of different terminology around it, but really we focus on 3 core elements. So we help with school and early care and education gardens and greenhouses. We offer ag and nutrition education, and then of course that local procurement piece. So helping actually get local Nebraska grown and raised food onto the plate in front of the kids at schools.
Well, the Harvest of the Month program is one of those programs you guys oversee there at your office. So tell me about that program and how did it get started? Kind of what's its mission and the goals that you have for it?
Sure. So the Harvest of the Month program is a statewide farm to school initiative that features different Nebraska local food products, or several different food products for each month of the year. And we actually have 7 new items this year. So that's really exciting, and a lot of support materials and education. But really the Harvest of the Month program, it's been around for a long time. Other states started sort of doing this, I don't know, probably about 15 years ago. And then about 7 years ago, Nebraska was like, hey, we want to do this too, because it is very specific to the state and the foods that are traditional to the state or that are grown. But the resources that we offer in combination with just highlighting, say, like apples for October, is that we also have information and resources that support sampling. So we have like a taste test guide that can be used for the lunchroom. And we like to call that having a lunchroom learning lab, where kids not are only eating foods, but understanding where foods are coming from, and why these foods are good for us. As well as a more lesson focused taste testing called a chef's table. And it's really sort of a sensory exploration of food. So we're using all of our senses to look at the food. Some of the recipes that come from our Harvest of the Month program before just tasting it and giving just that component or voting if they like it or not. We have stickers and coloring sheets that are for like the younger students. We also have newsletters that are available for families. Those include recipes and activities as well for each of the items. And really this all started 7 years ago in partnership with UNL Extension and Dr. Georgia Jones through a grant that we had at the NDE. We continue to partner with UNL, and we also now partner with the Department of Ag and Center for Rural Affairs as we've built out many of these resources over the last 7 years, and really this last year have really expanded our opportunities to be able to get into multiple settings. So this was originally just designed for the cafeteria. And so we've worked on getting our recipes more friendly for classrooms, for family consumer science teachers, for FFA teachers, for after school programs. And then Sarah has headed up over the last year an early childhood expansion of of Harvest of the Month into our ECE sites across the state. So that's really exciting as we're getting into multiple avenues to utilize Harvest of the Month.
Sarah, how are you getting out there, I guess, to let teachers know about this program, let schools know about this program? And is this a program that is going, school-wide or, grade-wise, across the board? Or talk a little bit about that aspect of it.
Yeah, our outreach is pretty expansive. Within our office, we utilize all our different avenues we have. So we have folks in our office that work with the National School Lunch Program. So we use their avenues to get it in front of food service directors. And then we also have the Child and Adult Care Food Program. So like Jessie said, we're getting it in front of those early care providers as well, so that they can be using it. We also do a lot of tabling and presentations at conferences throughout the state at various times of the year. So we go to career and tech ed conferences to get in front of those family consumer science educators, after school conferences to get in front of after school folks so they can integrate it. And then as our office and other offices in NDE are just traveling throughout the state for various site visits and their trainings and onboardings, we really try to get our materials into those as well, so that we're really trying to touch all our audiences and get in front of them so that they know that this is something that they can tap into and use, that the resources are made and ready for plug and play in a variety of different circumstances throughout the school day.
Well, I'm sure one of the most exciting parts of this for teachers and students is that they get to sample these local foods. So talk about how those are, who provides those, how you get access to those for the classrooms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go
ahead, Jessie.
Schools have a variety of opportunities to sample foods through some of their child nutrition programs. So if they have CACFP, they can use funding. They have school lunch dollars or fresh fruit and vegetable program dollars, or even after school program funding, as well as our local foods in school funding that we have. That's just sort of a time limited opportunity. So there's lots of different ways to get food into school, and even working with producers directly. And sometimes producers are kind enough to donate some of the products. And then Sarah, you can kind of talk about what that might look like in certain settings.
Yeah, we really try to meet the schools where they are. And one of the main focuses of Harvest of the Month and Farm to School in general is forming those connections within your community. So we really encourage schools to start small and get a starting point where they're maybe working with a local producer on one product, and we can help make that initial connection. But really what we want to see is that continuation of that communication between them and producers in their area. So local food, we let the schools determine that. So it's usually grown or raised within the state, but we also say within about 250 to 400 miles of your site is also considered local. So we know we have our schools way out west, they might be even closer to some products in Wyoming or Colorado or South Dakota, but still tapping into that community piece and getting foods there. So we really exist to help make some of those initial connections. We can guide them to the right places. Department of Agriculture keeps a pretty robust list of producers that they can look into. Also just, a lot of our schools someone from the school is just going to a farmer's market and asking around, is this something that we could work with you? Could we get local food into the school? And then also University of Nebraska Lincoln hosts we're one of the states that hosts an online platform called Market Maker. And that's really, I like to call it online dating, but for local foods. So schools can make profiles, and producers and ranchers around them make profiles and say, I have these certain items, and or I'm looking for these items, and then that program kind of matches them up. So that's another feature that they can kind of tap into and start for their search. So we really try to meet schools where they are. If they already have connections, we'll strengthen them. If they need help finding some new ones, we're there to help kind of troubleshoot some of that with them.
So this program has to probably be great for your overall farm to school program. So talk about that, how this has strengthened that, maybe how it's, getting local farmers and producers involved with the educational aspect, outside of, what they do on a daily basis. Talk about the, overall goals of this, or overall, positive aspects that you've seen.
So in general, I think it's an easy entry point for now a variety of settings to think about how they can partner more closely with producers. What we hear, even when we go to our rural places from educators, are that just because youth live in rural spaces, or even potentially on a farm, if it's just like a ranch, students don't necessarily know where our produce comes from, or how that looks, and how that's planted, and how that grows, and the amount of work that goes into, raising or producing a certain crop. And so they all feel this is very important. And then it's very cross-curricular. And so we've kind of worked with a variety of folks at the NDE and some of our teaching and learning areas to kind of figure out where we can align science and history, and then really literacy and English language arts. There's a lot of connection, and the early childhood lessons really focus on the literacy thing, which happens to be one of the commissioner's goals for the year. And so we're really trying to align a lot of the work that we're doing in the next year to support literacy. And it's a really easy fit through all the texts that are available in school libraries, or schools can order them online. USDA has some beginning readers that focus on the different food groups and align with a lot of the different products that we're highlighting in our program. And so really there's a huge connection. And then there's also sort of a surge in education to do more experiential learning. So really allowing kids to not just learn about something in a book, but then next step, taste testing, learn and see how these products grow, what it looks like on the outside versus the inside of, say, a watermelon. It looks very different. And so getting some of those into really any space and place where kids are learning, and that makes sense. I was able to visit a childcare center in Kearney a couple weeks ago, and she was super excited about the program, and they had done a watermelon party, and the kids had gotten to do a watermelon party and learning about watermelons through the Harvest of the Month program. And then they got to taste that, and like a different kind of watermelon. They had a yellow versus the traditional pink watermelon. And then they had like a water day after that, because everyone was all juicy. So it's just great to hear and see the pictures that folks share with us, and see how educators are so great at like expanding what we give them and then making it 10 times even better. And so we're working on curating a lot of those resources and making those available statewide as well.
So Sarah, what's been the response from the educational community? Are you seeing a lot of participation? What is the participation of this program?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that we really love about our program, like I mentioned before, it's really meeting people where they are. So we don't have boxes that you have to check that say like you have to do this so often, or every once a month, or this to say you're running Harvest of the Month. We keep all our materials available and free to download on our website. So they're not behind any walls. There's no sign up. So the positive of that is that anyone can reach them at any time, plug and play. If a farmer calls you up and says, I have leafy greens that are ready in 2 weeks, can you take them? You can say yes and pull the leafy green resources and use them. So they love how easy those resources are to kind of plug and play in classrooms and cafeterias across the state. Maybe the one downside to that is we don't have, that exact number of how many schools are running the program, because we do try to let it be a flexible thing for them to move in and out of. But it's more important to us, I think, that the schools have access to what they need when they need it, because we all know educators are way too stretched too thin already. And so having this flexibility within it and just having those resources available when they are at a spot where they can run this super easily, based on what's kind of available to them, has been we've gotten a lot of great feedback about that. There's so many regulations in schools, and they love that this is one thing where it's just kind of that additional piece that integrates, like Jessie was saying, so well into so many lessons. So we've had a really great positive response from our educational community about the Harvest of the Month program.
Jessie, what have you seen from your perspective?
I've seen a lot of creativity, and when we first started, we actually did have we made people kind of sign up. They had to put their email in every time they were going to access the resources, and then you were kind of cleared to use it, but then your computer didn't always remember that. And so what happened was there was a lot of duplication in our tracking, and we had a nice map that showed who was doing Harvest of the Month or who was doing our Nebraska Thursdays, which is our kind of food service complimentary piece where people serve local foods. And we had a nice map, but really we haven't been able to maintain that, in that we have opened it up and removed that restriction of those, emails. And so people can now actively use it. And because we've made the resources more available to after school program staff, are pushing out things to like family consumer sciences. And we really are just seeing people enjoy and like kind of even really be super appreciative of the resources that we're creating. Many schools have, as part of some of their title programs, there's some family engagement that's required. The fresh fruit and vegetable program requires that too. And then even after school. So having some of those family newsletters available helps kind of fill a need they have. And so really a lot of suggestions about what items we could possibly expand on. We hear that, and we like that, because we know that people are excited about the program and utilizing it in their communities. And so we are always kind of working on expanding. And so we're taking down those suggestions and putting those on our list to do for the future.
Well, Sarah, you mentioned schedules and time as possible challenges that you've seen. Anything else that you are seeing that maybe is a challenge to get this information to more schools, or maybe more schools being able to incorporate this into their school days?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I talked about it a little earlier when you were asking about sourcing the local food. I think a lot of schools can struggle with just making that initial first connection with a local producer or rancher, or vice versa. Local producers or ranchers hear about our program and want to get into a school, but kind of struggle with making that initial call. Schools can be overwhelming. Who do you call? Where do you contact to get it in there? So that is one piece that we hear about. And so that's why we really tried to serve as that liaison piece, kind of that initial spark to get those connections going between schools and producers. And once they have that connection, it's a lot easier to grow and continue that. Another thing, from a couple of years ago when we started the program, we just had every month had one item. And we said, like apples are October's harvest of the month. Which can be difficult. What if your apples didn't turn out that year, or you're hitting that an apples lesson that would integrate a lot better, but it's in November or September, different things like that. And so we really shifted our model from featuring that every item or one item every month, to now we really list the full seasonality of almost 30 of our items that we feature. So it just provides a lot more flexibility. So when you're looking at a certain month and kind of planning ahead, you have 5 or 6 that you can kind of pick from. Or as a producer calls you up and says, I have tomatoes right now, can you use them? Yes, and the resources are there for you to be able to plug and play for all of the months of the year. So that's been really helpful, I think, for schools and producers both to kind of be able to have that flexibility around that piece and kind of overcome some of that barrier and challenge to getting started.
So through a collaboration with the Center for Rural Affairs, Indigenous foods have been added to the list that students and teachers can learn more about. Jessie, you talked a little bit about expanding the program and how that's happened. So what has it been like working with the center, and what does this expansion mean for the program?
Yeah, we were able to partner with Christine Flying Hawk there at the center, and then she was able to connect us with Anthony Warrior, who's a chef and works for the NICC Community College, and he's on several campuses. I know he's in Isanti as well as in Macy at times, and he worked together with some of the folks across the state to identify recipes that were traditional to Nebraska tribes or tribes that are located in Nebraska, and created a list of home-sized recipes that we are currently testing in schools across the state. We were actually able to partner with Isanti, the family consumer science teacher last year. Delberta Frazier worked with her students. They made all the recipes and provided feedback and edits for us. And then kind of as a follow-up to that, then at the end of the school year, we were able to actually take one of the recipes that they had tested in the smaller, like we call it home size, and scale that up to food service size. And then we did a lunchroom taste testing with all the students in Isanti on a bison lettuce wrap. And the students were really engaged in that activity. They got one of our Harvest of the Month stickers. They were able to share if they liked it, loved it, or maybe next time would try that again. And so exposing some of the youth to bison, not all the kiddos had tried that before, so that was a new food and definitely a new recipe. Then really showed the value and sort of the cooperation within the school district and how to get youth engaged and provide that feedback. And now we'll be continuing that work at Omaha Nation and Macy, and then in Winnebago this fall, as well as we finish out sort of testing those recipes and then making them available online.
Well, Sarah, we'll start this one with you. So share a story or experience where you said to yourself, this is why I love this program.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've mentioned a few times, I've been working on this expansion of our program to encapsulate the early care and education side of things. And actually this spring we had a site that was running the program with their 3 to 5 year olds, and they were featuring berries that month, and had been talking about them in their classroom, and they had gone on some walks around their neighborhood to look at all the trees, and had sampled some berries that they got at a local farmer's market. But the site director actually reached out to me, and she was like, I wanted to let you know that, we had this tree in the back of our center for many years now, and it always drops berries, and we've just kind of brushed them to the side, and they've just kind of been more of a nuisance than everything. But this program prompted me to do some research, and one of my friends is in extension, so I asked her to confirm, and we actually found out it's a mulberry tree, and she sent a bunch of pictures. She's like, now we're using these in snack, and the kids love them. They were gonna do some different activities with them, but I got all these photos in my inbox of just purple mouth little 3 to 5 year olds after they've been snacking on mulberries, and getting to enjoy that feature of their outdoor classroom now. So she was like, I would have never thought to kind of do that unless I was prompted by the program to kind of dig into that more. So I think that shows, these foods are all around us, and even adults and kids across the state, might not know what those are, but the program just kind of invites you to ask that next question and take that next step. And now they have a delicious mulberry tree snack that they get to enjoy all the time in the spring and fall. So that was just one reason, again, where it was a fun one. And that's why I love these programs and Farm to School.
Jessie, how about you?
Yes, there's been a lot of opportunities where I've been able to see kids trying things, and really one of the opportunities that stands out in my head was not actually working with elementary kids, but really working with our secondary kids, because if youth don't get to try something, say hummus, when they're young, it's one of those foods that maybe isn't the most eye appealing. And so I was able to partner with an extension staff person, and then Burwell Public Schools had a USDA Farm to School grant. So we visited their classroom. Nebraska is one of the largest dry bean producers in the country. And so we went to their FFA class and talked to students about that and some bean production pieces. And then we worked with the students to taste test a variety of different hummuses. So we did like a red pepper, kind of an original, and then we did a dessert hummus. And most of the kids in the class, high school students, had never tried any kind of hummus at all, yet, let alone all the variety. And so it was really exciting to see them try something new and be open to that. And no one's ever too old to try new foods and learn to like different things. And so they were all kind of surprised as well that they liked the variety of hummuses, and provided some feedback on what was the best dipping items for each of the different kinds of hummus. So that's one of my favorite school stories.
Well, those are great. Thank you so much for sharing those. So if you'd like to learn more about the Harvest of the Month program, I've included a link to the program's page on the NDE's website below. Sarah and Jessie, thank you again for joining me on this month's Rural Rapport, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about the Center for Rural Affairs, visit our website at cfra.org. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.